is Myra Elaine on the Vine Space Channel. Today I'm going to do my adult Bible studies live. Usually I pre-record it, and I've been considering going live on the weekends for the Bible studies. This is the booklet we use with my church, Adult Bible Studies, Claiming Identity, Fall 2024. Fall 2024. And we are on October the 20th. And today's supplemental readings are as follows. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verses 16 to 21. Now, this passage is about our relationship with God. So we started the unit with identity, going through the genealogy of Jesus Christ and recognizing that our own family history and genealogy has a fundamental meaning and purpose in our identities as individuals. And then we went through a unit for, let's say, family groupings, and how we were brought up in our faith. The birds are noisy this morning. How we're brought up in our faith, what denomination we started out in, what denomination we ended up in. I had a very interesting spiritual journey. I was an atheist for 41 years. And when I returned to Christianity, I found it very different than when I left Christianity because the whole world had changed. So this week, we're talking about relationships with others and how our relationships affect our relationship to God and our identity. And the focal passage is in Genesis chapter 25, and the purpose statement is to recognize the importance of relationships with others. So our standing in the community, how other people feel about us, whether we get along with other people or not. And this goes into Jacob and Esau, who were brothers. So this goes into your basic family unit. And Jacob and Esau were brothers, not only brothers, but they were twins. And when they were born, Jacob was the second born by probably a few minutes. And he came out holding the heel of Esau. So they came out one right after the other, with Jacob holding Esau's heel. And their mother had had a dream that the younger brother would be more blessed, receive the birthright and the blessing, and would carry the nation forward. And many sons would be born of both of them. And she had two nations in her belly. And so that family relationship from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, that family lineage, that family history determined the entire future of the world. And it was meant to be. God designed it to be that way. That's why God had their mother have a vision that the youngest would be the dominant son, that he would carry on the birthright and the blessing, and both of them would have nations, but Jacob's nation would be the chosen people of God. So anyway, the next reading is in Proverbs chapter 25, verses 11 and 12. And these verses are just wonderful. These are wonderful, inspiring verses. Now, the book of Proverbs itself was written by King Solomon, and he wrote the Song of Solomon, and he wrote Proverbs, and he wrote some of Psalms. Psalms is accredited, or Psalm, the book of Psalm, that is full of Psalms, is credited to his father, King David, who started it, because he was before he was king, he was a shepherd and a musician. And his son Solomon, growing up with all that wisdom and knowledge around him, became a very wise man. So we're looking at chapter 25 in Proverbs 11 and 12. A word fitly spoken is like the apple of gold in the settings of silver, like the earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, is a wise rebuker to an obedient ear. So, what this means is if you have the right words at the right time, that's golden. You can have all the land, all the possessions, and stumble about your tongue and make other people feel bad. I had a boyfriend before I met my husband, and he always said to me, Myra, you know exactly what to say. What I had to say to him, to counsel him, to help him, to be his helpmate, and we thought future wife, was to say what needed to be said. And this part about a wise rebuker to an obedient ear, he valued what I had to say and he listened to it. And it wasn't like he had to obey me, kind of situation, but he wanted to hearken, to hear, to listen what I had to say, because the other times that we had talked, where I was comforting him and talking to him about different situations, not necessarily that meant that he needed to change anything or, to make him see the effect that he was having on others. But he knew those words were true. He knew that I knew what to say and I was wise to what he needed to hear. And that's one of the things that made our relationship work. I won't go into what made the relationship not work, but let's just say he didn't listen to everything I had to say. But if you read the Word of God with an obedient ear, it's like gold. You know that friend you have that knows exactly what to say? Isn't that more precious than gold or silver to you? And that's what this is saying. And this unit is talking about relationships and what we should do in relationships. Now, the recommended reading for that day also goes on to include some more verses from this chapter, starting in verse 17. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, lest he become weary of you and hate you. A man who hears false witness against his neighbor is like a club, a sword, and a sharp arrow. Confidence in an unfaithful man in a time of trouble is like a bad tooth and a foul out of joint, a foot out of joint. Ever try to walk with a foot that is sprained or broken or out of joint? Such pain and toothaches too. Like one who takes away a garment in cold weather, and like vinegar on soda, is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For so you will reap coals of fire on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Now, a lot of people don't get this last one. Why would you want to feed your enemy and give them water when they're thirsty? This is kind of has to do with guilt. If someone is acting as your enemy, even if they are saying that they're your friend, be kind to them, because it'll eventually get to them that you are so good that you're not going to do anything against them. And do what you can to make sure that they don't even know that you have a clue. And just go right along with a smile on your face. Now, a lot of people call that idiocy. I don't. I think once you acknowledge a problem that cannot be resolved between two people, that's when the drama and the war starts. Acknowledgement of differences sometimes is not beneficial. Now, sometimes it is. If I come to you to discuss a situation, it doesn't necessarily mean I want to argue. I'm not trying to argue, I'm trying to resolve a situation, bring light to a situation that needs to be changed, that possibly could be changed. Now, if there's something going on, like you have a sibling that's of one political party and you're of another political party and you've locked horns, there's no way out of that. There is no way out of that, and people don't back down on politics anymore. And then you can't use your hands. You can't get anything done. So when you go to Thanksgiving dinner this year, don't clamp up, don't dig in your heels, don't talk about politics or even religion. If you know that your sibling or whoever you're going to Thanksgiving dinner with is not going to change their mind and they're not going to agree with you, and if they bring it up, my sister in law does this clever thing. When things are brought up that are tactless and unproductive, let's say, she'll say, "Do you think we're going to have any weather?" And that's her signal to everybody that the subject needs to be changed. And I think it's a brilliant thing to do. So memorize that, folks. Do you think there'll be any weather? Unless you're arguing about weather, that's perfect for to get along with the other people in your family or extended family during the holiday season. So sometimes you do have to address things, and at other times, the wisdom is to leave it alone, especially when you're trying to get together to celebrate your family, spend time with each other, and have a joyous holiday season, whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever your celebration is. Kwanzaa, Ramadan is sometimes falls during the holiday season when we have Hanukkah and Christmas, but it doesn't this year. So those of you that say happy, you know, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, and you include Ramadan in that, you might be showing that you don't know about Ramadan, which is kind of insulting to Islamic people. So make sure that the year you do that, every year, that you, if you're the kind of person that would say that to everyone, which I like those kinds of people that are inclusive to all people because we're all God's children, check your calendar to see what holidays are actually during the season from, say, Thanksgiving until Epiphany on January 6th, if those holidays are actually included in that time frame. Because, you know, I had to tell some people, well, this year, Ramadan is not in November, December, or January. So you might not want to put that on your social media. You might not want to send that in your holiday card if you're trying to be, you know, all inclusive. It's very nice when it is included in that time frame, but you know, it might not be. So we have a duty to get along with each other and not to know when's the right time to do things and when the time is, you know, when and where it should be done. Like, I'm hoping right now, I'm not looking at my chat. You're all welcome here. I hope no one's causing drama in my chat. If you have a problem with me, I request you send me an email, and my email's on my About page. So let's go ahead and see what other passages are in the supplemental readings for this week. So I read on Wednesday night the four Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So for my adult Bible studies, I tend not to read from the Gospel. So I'm going to go to 1 Timothy chapter 3, 1 to 7. So 1 Timothy is in the New Testament. It's believed to be written by Timothy. Actually, most of the books in the New Testament beyond the four Gospels were written by Paul. John wrote John 1, 2, and 3, not the disciple John, but the other John wrote John 1, 2, and 3 and Revelation, and they are the last books of the Bible. But 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 to 7. This is a faithful saying: if a man declares the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride he fall into some condemnation, as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. So this is just basically talking about church leadership. Not every church has a bishop. The early church evidently did have bishops that were over pastors in churches. So this was early on. We're talking about churches when they first started out. Some were founded by the leadership of Peter, and some were founded by the leadership of Paul. And evidently, in the early church days, there were bishops. And when the church kept growing, I know one of the people that was recruited because they had a serious commitment to serving the poor. When Jesus was alive, before he died and was crucified, died, resurrected, and ascended, he talked about the poor. He fed the poor. He fed the multitudes with bread and fishes. And there's two separate incidences where he does that. Or maybe it's just in two different books of the Bible. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to look that up. But Jesus himself, told us to take care of the poor, the widow, the orphans. That's from Jesus. That's not Old Testament. We are, as Christians, are to help other people. And so Stephen was one of the people that was brought in as a person to minister or to help with the poor. And he was evangelical. In addition to helping with the poor, you do it at the same time. As you're giving out a loaf of bread, you could talk about the bread of life. You don't have to just silently hand out food. It's to create a community and a network of people helping each other and doing so and out of Christian love. It's not something that is just you go there like you're doing it out of obligation. You're doing it to show people that they're worthy and they're loved and God loves them and you love them. And it's not something that you're just doing because you want a ticket to heaven, that you're doing this out of the genuineness of your heart. And it's not something that you're looking for, how can I say this? Something back. You're doing it out of Christian love and kindness. If you go in with the attitude that, oh, okay, God, I'm doing this for these people, now I want you to do something for me, you can't do that. You might as well stay at home because you're condemning yourself, because you are doing it out of selfishness and you're supposed to be doing it out of love with expecting nothing in return except God's blessing. And that God's blessing doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a new car or you're going to get whatever it is materialistically that you're praying for. Your reward will be in heaven. There's 5 different crowns you can earn in heaven. I don't really want to go into that this morning, but the idea is that while you're doing that as well, if you are on, if say you volunteer for a food bank, and on the way to the food bank, somebody cuts you off in traffic, and you're blowing that horn, and you might even use sign language or say profanity because you're in that road rage mode. And then when you get to the food bank, one of the people in the line at that food bank is that person that cut you off. What kind of testimony are you? And just in our everyday lives, when we go to the bank, when we answer a phone call, and I'm guilty of this. Yesterday I got triggered and I was a complete smart aleck to somebody. I didn't yell or scream or use profanity, but I was certainly rude. And I kind of get that way sometimes when my family's health or my health is at risk and the person on the other line doesn't seem to care. And so I get triggered and it's something that I have to work on. When somebody treats me unfairly, I get triggered. I absolutely positively will say something. Of course, that goes back to I have to think about, I have to analyze, okay, is this going to help this situation? Or is this situation already over with? So I might as well speak my mind. But I need to speak it in a rational, calm manner. And I need to speak it without being a smart aleck because I got a little bit of mischievous in me. Nobody's perfect. And sometimes that comes out of me. And I pray. I prayed the other morning that God would help me with the telephone calls I had to make. And at one point in time, I lost it after being transferred 4 times and every single solitary person failing me when they transferred me and not giving my information. And I was an hour and a half doing something that should have taken 5 minutes. And I didn't have the patience for it that day. And I knew I didn't have the patience for it that day. And when I prayed to God for help that morning, I knew I didn't have the patience for it. So I should have made that call the next day after I prayed more, after I read my Bible more, because I was not polite. But they weren't being polite to me. But that doesn't matter. You show that you're a good person by being good, no matter how bad the other person is being. If it's a situation where the other party is maybe going to treat other people the way they treated you. In other words, if there's a pickpocket out there, don't think you're being rude by reporting that pickpocket to the police, even if what has happened to you cannot be proven, because that will create a paper trail. I told somebody in administration at the hospital the other day, I said, if you have a patient come and say this thing about this particular office, believe the patient. There's nothing I could do about the situation, but sometimes when you report things, even if they don't put it down on a piece of paper and make a report, the person that's in charge of that will know the history of that if someone else calls and says, oh, I went to this doctor's office and they did this. And that person that is in charge of, whatever it is, will remember that you called and said the exact same thing. So it's not just to be a complainer. Is this situation bad? Is this person going to continue to do this to other people? That's what you have to ask yourself. Now, if it's a one-time odd situation where it'll never happen again, those are the situations you walk away from and just pray about and forgive that person, because you don't want to hang on to anger or resentment. And a lot of times it depends upon who it is. If it's somebody that's mandatory in your life, you have to deal with it. But if it's somebody that's not mandatory in your life, that you can just walk away from, you can just tune out, then maybe it's best that you not say anything, that you just walk away. But sometimes you need to give an explanation whether you're going to walk away or not. So in human relationships, we need to pray and to go to the scriptures. And if we're going to take leadership in the church, if we're going to take extreme leadership like a bishop, this is a good outline for, I don't like that it says it's directed just towards men, because ladies, we are leaders. We are, just as Christians, we are to be examples of how to live and how to forgive other people and how to navigate human relationships. And we're not ever going to say we're perfect, but we're also going to do our best to be a good example. And I think I just look at this and I'm like, if people would follow the rules for somebody being a bishop and apply them to our political leaders, about reputation and not committing crime and only having one spouse, or in our society, maybe two, but being loyal to that spouse. This is a prime example of moral rules to follow in life. And why would we want, if we don't want a bishop that is like this, why would we want a senator? Of course, I'm not particularly talking about any specific state in saying that, or any specific political race, but why would you want somebody in charge of the region of your state in Washington if they aren't a moral person and known to tell the truth? I don't know. That's a rare thing in politics anymore. You almost have to be, dishonest to get elected anymore. So, but anyway, I think this is a good set of rules. Not known to be violent, not known for greed, gentle and not quarrelsome. Oh my gosh, if we had leaders like this in the church and in our government, how wonderful would that be? But I've gone beyond what I usually do for the adult Bible studies. I hope you all have enjoyed this and received something from it. And I hope you all have a wonderful and blessed day.